Welcome, everyone, to episode 262 of the Ages Podcast. I'm David Stewart, and I'm here today with my wonderful co-host, Margaret.
And today we are in conversation with Mike Siemens, the longtime director of performance science at Canyon Ranch. Mike's been on a 30-plus year mission to help people live younger, longer. For him, this started way before longevity was a buzzword. His personal transformation from beer and pizza college kid to endurance athlete is pretty inspiring, and what he has to say about VO2 max, strength training after 50, and recovery might just shift the way you approach your own health.
Make the word performance what you want it to be. Is it having the aerobic fitness to be able to hike with your grandkids up that 1,000-foot elevation trail in a national park? So we often say performance science is a department where a performance scientist helps people find the best exercise regimen for them. I like to say VO2 max is akin to your horsepower of the engine in your car, right? It is your aerobic horsepower, which really dictates how fast can you walk up a hill, how fast can you run, how fast can you power a bicycle, how fast you can swim.
I'm so excited to meet Mike in person next week. I'm going to be at Canyon Ranch in Tucson. Later in this episode, we'll be sharing 3 new stories from the world of wellness and longevity. Margaret, what do we got on the docket today?
So it was a big week for sleep and heart health. We got warnings about how long-term melatonin usage and certain bedroom lighting may be negatively impacting your heart health. Plus, a new study that shows how boosting having control can reduce your daily stress burden.
Sounds good. That's all ahead, right after this message from our sponsor.
It's easy to forget about hydration as the seasons change. However, keeping your fluid intake up is key to maintaining your health and energy level during winter. Whether I'm on the mountain or in the city, Element electrolytes give me the hydration boost that I need. Plus, their newest flavor and my favorite, lemonade salt, has become a permanent Element product. Try Element today by going to element.com/ageist and receive a free 8-serving sample pack with any purchase. That's drinklmnt.com/ageist. Health starts in your kitchen. That's why I cook with Our Place. First and foremost, their cookware is toxin-free. That means no forever chemicals like Teflon and no sketchy coatings. Just clean, high-performance design that looks good, preparing the food that makes you feel good. Right now, Our Place is having their biggest sale of the year, up to 35% off through January 12th. Head to FromOurPlace.com/ageist and give your kitchen the upgrade it deserves. Enjoy free shipping, free returns, and a 100-day risk-free trial. No code needed. The first time I cooked a new Ohana Reserve aged cut from Maui Nui venison, I knew I couldn't go back. This isn't just meat. It's wild harvested axis deer from Maui, aged 14 days for that deep, rich flavor that makes you stop mid-bite. No feedlots, no antibiotics, just clean, nutrient-dense venison that feels as good as it tastes. Subscribe now at mauinuivenison.com/ageist and get a free 12-pack of venison jerky sticks with your first order of $79 or more. That's MAUINUI venison.com/ageist. But be quick, the Ohana Reserve cuts come in limited quantities, so once they're gone, that's it. Finally, when you're asked where you heard about Maui Nui, don't forget to mention the Ages Podcast. It goes a long way for the show.
Let's get into it. Here's our conversation with Mike Siemens. Hey, Mike, great to see you. Are you in Tucson today?
I am in beautiful, sunshiny Tucson. The oppressive desert heat is over, and we are enjoying a beautiful day of about 80 degrees, overnight low of 40. So yes, I'm in beautiful Tucson, Arizona.
Wow. I'd like you to walk us through a little bit your journey to becoming the Director of Performance Science at Canyon Ranch. How did you end up there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll try to keep this brief because like many good stories, it can go on for a while. But basically there I was, a college freshman. I was at the University of Illinois studying business and economics and hating it, frankly. I was drinking too much late night beer and late night pizza. I gained about 15 pounds of fat. And that summer between freshman and sophomore year of college, I decided, if this goes on for 3 more years, I'm going to be having a 60-pound weight issue. I better take care of this. So I started riding my bicycle long distances out in the cornfields of central Illinois and really enjoying it. I was going 20 miles, 30 miles, 40, building up to 60, 70 miles at a time, just loving it. This is the early 1980s. And I went into a bike shop to buy some bike shorts for the first time because I was having some problems in the saddle areas, you might imagine, with just running shorts. And a person there said, "Hey, we're doing a mini triathlon in town in August. Why don't you train for that?" I was like, "What's a triathlon?" Anyway, long story short, I trained for that triathlon. I won my age group. I was super excited because I'd never won anything athletically in my life. And I started training, or reading rather, exercise physiology textbooks at the time about how to train for distance and aerobic exercise, and falling in love with just reading textbooks. Little did I know, I looked in the University of Illinois course catalog and found there was a whole department of kinesiology. And there was a class on exercise program design. And I went and asked the professor, could I join this class my sophomore year? I don't have any of the prerequisites. He was very excited to let me take this course. And basically, I switched my major to exercise science at that point and got straight A's ever since that point in exercise physiology. Went on and got my master's degree out at the University of Arizona. But my real galvanizing moment, I'll have to say, came 1989. My maternal grandmother was 90 years old. She had a stroke that disabled the left side of her body. She was put in a nursing home, was the term of the day. And I'll never forget, I was in my late teens, early 20s, feeling physically omnipotent, right? I could run 6-minute miles. I could ride my bike at 25 miles an hour, whatever the heck you wanted, I could do. And I walked into that nursing home and just felt the palpable pall of aging and death, the smell of decay and urine. Not that it was a bad place, but, just the overall pall of depression of a care center back in that day. And I really felt a calling that, Mike Siemens, you were put on this earth to keep people from getting in this condition. Because to me, it was totally offensive and unacceptable to be in that state of life. So imagine my delight when I found Canyon Ranch, which opened in 1979, by the way, but here it was 1991. And I found that Mel Zuckerman had started this beautiful place called Canyon Ranch, and had the motto of Canyon Ranch for employees is, "We are here to inspire our guests to make a commitment to healthy living." And I thought, that's my personal motto too. So that's kind of how I ended up here in 1991. And here I am 34 years later, still loving coming to work, loving spreading the word of healthy living. As Mel Zuckerman said, living younger, longer. I don't know if he gets original credit for that statement, but I've always liked it. And that's basically in a nutshell how I ended up here.
Help me to understand, what is performance science? What does that term mean?
Yeah, that's a great question as well, David, because we were originally called the Department of Exercise Physiology. And that has recognition problems as well with the general public. Most people say, what is an exercise physiologist? So probably 5 or 6 one of our directors thought the word exercise physiology, we used to be under the umbrella of health and healing. He didn't really like the idea of healing being in that term because it implied we were sick. And he liked the word performance better. So performance science is really the idea of, what are your goals for yourself for performance? Could it be running a faster 5K? Sure. Could it be doing a heavier clean and jerk? Sure. Could it be getting off the toilet all by yourself when you're 90 years old? Yes. So I always instruct our guests, hey, don't be intimidated by this word performance. Make the word performance what you want it to be. Is it having the aerobic fitness to be able to hike with your grandkids up that 1,000-foot elevation trail in a national park? Is it being able to lift your carry-on bag over in the overhead bin and put it in there? So we often say performance science is a department where a performance scientist helps people find the best exercise regimen for them. And we do that through a lot of fitness testing, which we can talk more about if you want to hear about that. So we're basically here at Canyon Ranch to help our guests develop effective, safe, enjoyable exercise programs. That's what a performance scientist does in my book.
Before we get into VO2 max and how it relates to hiking in your 90s, let's take a moment to thank one of our show's sponsors. They help make these conversations possible.
As the weather cools down and the days get shorter, one thing I'm not cutting back on is staying hydrated, and not just with water. This time of year, it's easy to forget how much we still need electrolytes, especially if you're working out, fasting, or just living in a heated house all day. That's where Element comes in, my go-to for clean, zero-sugar electrolytes. No weird additives, no junk, just science-backed hydration that actually tastes great. Plus, their latest flavor, lemonade salt, is here to stay. tart, refreshing, and perfectly balanced. Whether you're hitting the gym or the hiking trail or just trying to avoid that 3 p.m. crash, Element keeps you dialed in. Ready to upgrade your hydration? Go to drinkelement.com/ageist and you'll get a free 8-serving sample pack with any purchase. That's drinklmnt.com/ageist. I've tested a lot of products over the years, but our place has truly earned a permanent spot in my kitchen. The reason? It's clean. Most non-stick pans still use Teflon or PFA's, forever chemicals that end up in your food and your body. That's not the future of cooking, that's the past. The Our Place cookware set gives you everything you need. 2 always pans and 2 perfect pots, all toxin-free and designed to replace a stack of bulky, outdated cookware. Eggs slide right off of the non-stick surface, cleanup's a breeze, and they look incredible in their signature colors. I've been loving the Always Pan Pro lately. No coating, pure titanium, nearly indestructible. If you're serious about what goes in your body, start with what you're cooking with. Our Place is having their biggest sale of the year right now. Save up to 35% site-wide now through January 12th. Head to FromOurPlace.com/ageist to see why more than 1 million people have made the switch to Our Place kitchenware. And with their 100-day risk-free trial, free shipping, and free returns, you can shop with total confidence. Shop the Our Place holiday sale right now. No code needed.
So if I have this ambition that in my mid-90s, I want to be hiking in the Alps. That's what I want to be able to do. So
Yeah.
I come in to see you. What do you test me for?
Yeah, well, we're going to test your VO2 max probably first and foremost, right? Your aerobic fitness level. We're going to put you on a treadmill or a bike, put the mask on your face. We're going to do an 8 to 15 minute test and get you to probably 85 to 90+% of your capacity and measure your aerobic fitness level because, of course, if we're walking in the Alps, we need to have an aerobic capacity that's probably north of 35 milliliters per kilogram of body weight, or at least in the low 30s, to be able to do some decent hiking at altitude. Not that the Alps are super altitude, but going uphill takes a lot of work. And we'd be able to say, hey, to walk at 3 miles an hour at centigrade, this is the oxygen cost of that. And if you want to be able to do that for a couple hours, you better have a little excess VO2 max above that capacity so you can hike at 65, 75% of that for hours on end. We're also going to test your body composition. We love DEXA body composition testing here at Canyon Ranch because it's really the gold standard, gives us the most detail of visceral fat and bone density and that kind of thing. Obviously, maintaining muscle function and muscle mass and strength as we age is huge because, man, after age 80, 85, wow, our hormones, growth hormone, testosterone are not going to help us out too much. So we've got to get a little jump start on that in your 50s and 60s if we can to build a little excess reserve so that by the time you get to 90, you've got some left in the tank. Also, if you have some orthopedic challenges, I mean, who's 50, 60 years old or 70 that does not have some sort of ache or pain somewhere? We've got a wonderful team of sports medicine doctors, chiropractically trained doctors that are experts in analyzing mechanical function of joints, figuring out what is your root cause of your pain cycle and changing that so that you can train properly and get muscle on your bones and body and do your cardiovascular exercise without re-irritating your back. Those are the 2 main things we're going to test to make you ready to hike in those Alps in your 90s.
So you mentioned VO2 max.
Yes.
This is a term that gets thrown around a lot.
Yes, it does.
Give us a simple layman's explanation. What are we talking about? You said something, you threw out the number 30 something. What is this and what are people aiming? So I know how old am I? I'm 66. I'm going to be 67 next month. So say somebody in their mid 60s, what should I be aiming for?
Yeah, great question. VO2 max is, fortunately, thanks to some other podcasters, Peter Attia and so forth, right? Biohackers, whatever we might want to call them, have really popularized these terms. So now when I'm in a presentation and I ask, who's heard of VO2 max? Almost every hand goes up, but the understanding of it is not complete for the average person. So I like to say VO2 max is akin to your horsepower of the engine in your car, right? It is your aerobic horsepower, which really dictates how fast can you walk up a hill, how fast can you run, how fast can you power a bicycle, how fast you can swim. So a lot of people really don't care about their performance per se in terms of speed per mile, but they really care about their functional capacity. So that's where we really get people hooked on training VO2 maximum, is being able to do what you want to do. The other thing that VO2 max is correlated with, of course, as we know, is longevity and or health span. So there's kind of this inverse J-shaped relationship to, if we put VO2 max on the y-axis and longevity on the x-axis. So we have VO2 max on the y, longevity on the x-axis. We see that inverse J-shaped curve, which means if you have low VO2 max, we see much higher risk of heart disease, diabetes, dementia, stroke, even some forms of cancer, higher risk if you have poor aerobic function. And a real easy way to remember is VO2 max, O2 stands for oxygen and the V stands for volume. The more volume of oxygen your body can bring into your working cells, the better every cell in your body is going to work. So the better your immune system is probably going to work, the better everything's going to function. So if we have low VO2, higher risk of all those things. If we can get up to probably the 75th or 80th percentile VO2 max for your age, and VO2 max does decline with age, primarily because of reduced heart rate maximum. Your maximum heart rate that you can achieve is not trainable. That's the one thing we cannot improve with aging or with training. So it's going to go down as we get older. And this is the primary reason we don't see any world records set in endurance events over age 40 or so, right? Because you just don't have the cardiac output. The heart is not beating as fast. But we can increase our stroke volume, how much blood comes out of the heart with each beat, through increasing the size of our left ventricle and also the contractility of that left ventricle. And the other side of VO2 max is we can also improve our capillary density. Believe it or not, we can increase the network of capillaries in our working muscles. And this is very muscle specific, of course. So if you train swimming, you're going to develop a better capillary density in your arm muscles and upper back, not in your leg muscles per se. So we got to do it in the sport we're interested in improving in, or the activity. So VO2 max, if we can get VO2 max up to 75th or 85th percentile for a guy your age, and I can read out of my American College of Sports Medicine guideline book what that is, David, for you in a minute, if you want to hear the exact numbers. But think of it this way: walking down the street on flat ground is going to cost the average person about 18 milliliters of oxygen per kilogram of body weight per minute. Now, I know that's a mouthful of a unit, so let's break it down. 18 milliliters of oxygen, a volume of oxygen per unit of body weight. So here's a huge training opportunity for a lot of people. If you are carrying a lot of excess body fat, that is a huge wet blanket on your aerobic fitness level. It's like carrying around an extra 50, 60 or more, whatever pounds of extra body fat in a backpack on your back, which is hugely expensive in terms of work. So one tool a lot of people can use to improve rather their VO2 maximum is losing body fat. So that's why we like to do that tandem of testing VO2 max and body composition together, because we can then demonstrate mathematically, hey, if you can lose 15, 20 pounds of fat or more, here's the impact that has on your aerobic fitness level. So back to our example of walking down the street. If you need 18 or so, 15 milliliters of oxygen per kilogram of body weight per minute just to walk, and your VO2 maximum is anywhere close to that, you're not living a very robust life, right? Because you walk 100 yards down the street and you got to stop and take a break because your heart rate's high, you're breathing fast. That work of walking down the street is feeling strenuous. And of course, we don't want that, right? We want to have an aerobic capacity double that, perhaps, to my analogy of walking in the Alps and hiking uphill, right? If you have a VO2 max double that, 36, 30 at least, then you've got a little headroom with which you could run from the gate of your plane arriving to the connecting gate if your connection is tight, right? If you don't have that extra VO2 max, you're walking and you might miss that connection. If you don't have a lot of headroom above 18 or 15 milliliters per kilogram of body weight, you are not walking uphill briskly on a mountain at all, because it's too expensive aerobically for you to do. So that's where we really get that gauge of, can we get north of 35? Being in the low to mid 40s is excellent in terms of milliliters of oxygen per kilogram of body weight for guys your age. And of course, elite athletes in your age that are out running the Boston Marathon and, running in that 3-hour marathon marker. So we're going to probably have VO2 maxes in the 60s or so, even at the age of 60, 65 years of age, which is amazing. And we see world-class athletes probably up as high as 80 or 85 or more milliliters per kilogram of body weight, which is just phenomenal and basically unattainable by most people because you need some genetic gifts to be that high. It's kind of like saying, if I studied quantum theoretical physics every waking hour of my life, I don't think I'd come up with a theory of relativity like Einstein did, right? There's no way, Jose. So you got to have some genetic gifts to be a world-class athlete and then train very diligently and accurately. Did that give you some information to go on VO2 max there?
I've only had a VO2 max test once. It was like March last year.
Yeah.
Pre-knee surgery. And it was okay. It was 47. So
Great. Very strong.
the thing I want to just say is it's super trainable. So I sort of focused on that for about 8 months.
Yeah.
And you can make enormous strides. The plasticity there versus some other things. Putting on muscle for me is hard, but this I seem to be more adaptable at.
Right. And I'm glad you brought that up because, like most things in life, genetics play a huge role in our inherited VO2 max, but also, interestingly, trainability of VO2 max as muscle mass is highly inheritable as well. Right? Some people are what we call non-responders. They can train pretty diligently, maybe move their VO2 max 5% or so if they're lucky, and maybe more if they have body fat to lose, as we talked about earlier. And also then there are the huge responders, right, that will improve 30, 40%. So you can count yourself lucky and grateful that you're a huge responder. That's wonderful.
Well, I could put muscle on my post-op leg at that rate. That would be great. That's a little
Yeah. Well, we have to keep you humble some way, David, right? You can't be great at everything.
Hang tight. We're about to dig deeper into the science behind Zone 2 training. But first, a quick word from our partners.
We talk a lot about what goes into our food, but rarely do we think about where it comes from, how the animal lived, what it ate, whether it ever saw the sun. The first time I cooked Maui Nui's Ohana Reserve venison, I could taste the difference. This was meat that lived well and free, and it shows. No stress, no hormones, just clean, nutrient-dense, unbelievably tender, wild venison aged for 14 days. What's more, you feel better after eating it. That's not hype. It's 22 grams of protein per 100 calories and a freedom you can taste. But this isn't in stores, it's subscription only. The Ohana Reserve box gives you 3 premium aged cuts and ground venison delivered frozen right to your door. Go to mauinuivenison.com/ageist and grab your box before subscriptions fill. And get this, they're throwing in a free 12-pack of jerky sticks with your first order of $79 or more. That's MAUINUI venison.com/ageist. Once you've tried this, nothing else measures up. Last thing here, when they ask you where you heard about Maui Nui, make sure to mention the Ageist podcast. It really helps support the show. Thanks.
Talk to me a little bit about sort of the other component of this is Zone 2. So this is another thing people talk a lot about. There's ways to measure this. Help us unpack this a little bit, Mike.
Yeah, tons of confusion about Zone 2 out there. Historically, I mean, previous to 2 years ago, probably I would say most people's Zone 2 definition would be that is 65 to 75% of my maximum heart rate. Because if we look at Apple Watch, we look at Garmin, we look at Peloton, whatever you're going to look at, right? They will have zones 1 through 5, maybe zones 1 through 7. Everybody has a little proprietary wiggle on that. And the big hiccup there, of course, is what is your actual maximum heart rate, right? Unless we test that, we don't really know because human biological variability, maximum heart rate, we cannot rely on 220 minus age, which is the default equation that all these tools will use as you enter in your birth year, right? And a lot of people often read on the internet, okay, to calculate your maximum heart rate, 220 minus age. Well, if you get into the nitty-gritty exercise science research, that maximum heart rate can vary up to 30 beats per minute from that 220 minus age calculation. So let's use me as an example. I'm 61 years old. So if I just take away 1 year to make the math simple, 220 minus 60, my age predicted max heart rate is 160. Now, my true maximum heart rate might be as high as 190, and that would be considered within normal limits, WNL. Or I could have a max heart rate of 130. And then a lot of people say, well, if you have a lower max heart rate, that means you're less fit. Not necessarily, because if we take and we understand what is the heart rate doing, it's one part of cardiac output, right? Which is how much blood can your heart pump totally. So we call that Q dot in car physiology. Q dot equals heart rate times stroke volume. If I have a big heart that takes lots of time to fill my large left ventricle that I've developed either through training or just genetically, I have a large heart, takes longer to fill that heart. I got a bigger chamber, takes longer to empty. So therefore, my maximum heart rate might be slower because of just fluid dynamics. We cannot compress blood and make it smaller. So to fill a bigger chamber, it's going to take longer. To empty that bigger chamber, it's going to take longer. But meanwhile, the cardiac output for a heart rate of 130 might be the same as someone else's at 160. So we cannot really compare absolute heart rate from one person to another unless they have the exact same maximum heart rate. So that's question number one. How do we figure out your maximum heart rate? We test it here, right? We love to put people on treadmills we were talking about, or bike, attach a chest strap heart rate monitor. Although the wrist mounted ones are fairly accurate these days, we like to defer to chest strap and rev up that heart and see where they end up, right? So then we have a fairly accurate idea of what the true maximum heart rate is. Then, we can calculate that mathematical zone two. But all the talk lately is not about this mathematical zone two. It's more about this physiological zone two, which has much more to do with what type of fuel source are you burning and what is your lactic acid level of the blood. In fact, zone two is described as and defined as the highest intensity of exercise at which your blood lactic acid level stays at 2 or less, 2 millimolar units or less, which basically means that's the highest intensity of exercise at which you can metabolize and burn only fat as your primary fuel source. Because once we start burning carbohydrate in the muscles, not muscle tissue itself, but the carbohydrate stored in between the muscle fibers, the muscle glycogen, then we start to increase our blood lactic acid levels above 2. So the only way to really know if you're in zone two is to actually measure your lactic acid level of the blood. Now we have a lactic acid measuring device here, monitor here. We take a small little finger prick of blood, like a diabetes finger prick, spring-loaded little thing. You can't even feel it, and measure that with our lactate analyzer. Average person listening probably does not have one of those devices to measure that, although probably in the next couple of years, we might see wearables, Apple Watches, Garments that do give us blood lactic level through the skin with light sensing. And so that'll be neat when we have that. So other ways we can figure out zone two other than blood lactate. Number one, let's agree that zone two training is all steady state exercise. So we're not doing interval work. We're not varying the intensity. It's primarily exclusively cardiovascular exercise. The type does not matter, right? We can do swimming, we can do treadmill walking, we can do outdoor walking, we can do running, we can do rowing, we can do biking. Elliptical does not matter, but it's not weightlifting and it's not interval training. It's a pace most people would describe as comfortably uncomfortable. That might sound like a big oxymoron, right? What the heck is he talking about? That means if I ask you, Dave, how's this feeling? You might say, feels kind of challenging, but not super hard. I could do this for a long time. A trained person could do several hours of zone two effort. Do they need to do that long? Depends on the sport maybe, but for health and wellness, we're probably looking at least 20, 40 minutes worth of zone two training in that comfortably uncomfortable pace. Yes, you would be perspiring pretty steadily after 15 or so, 20 minutes of this pace. And if you're talking to someone, you can probably say 12 or 15 words in between your speech pattern before you're interrupting with a little bit of a breath. Now, you're not taking a breath every 3 or 4 words. It's not real gaspy training. That's well beyond zone two. You're in zone 3, 4, or 5 up there. So it's comfortably uncomfortable, blood lactic levels 2 or less, and somewhere between 65 and 85% of your maximum heart rate. That's a wide range, and it's not helping very many people I know. And here's why it varies from person to person. Imagine this, you're not very fit aerobically. You cannot bring very much oxygen into your working muscles. That's what VO2 means, volume of oxygen into your working muscles and burning it up. So you're not well trained. You don't have a great cardiac output. Your heart muscle's not very strong. You don't have good capillary density yet. You can still build these things, but right now you're not in that shape. Therefore, if you can't bring much oxygen into your muscles, you're going to have to rely on carbohydrate fuel, that anaerobic fuel, at a lower exercise effort. Therefore, you're going to get booted out of zone 2 because of blood lactic acid levels rising at an easier or lighter intensity and closer to 65-70% of your max heart rate. A person on the contrary who's very fit, like you do a lot of training, you've got a high VO2 max, and now we know higher than 47 after you trained a little bit. Very good. You can bring a lot of oxygen into your working muscles, so you can burn a lot of fat. Therefore, your blood lactic acid levels stay lower even at high intensities of exercise, which is performance-wise a tremendous advantage and also comfort-wise big advantage. But as a result, you have to work at a little higher percentage of your maximum heart rate and be in zone 2. So it's a little tough to pinpoint, by talking someone through it. That's why we love hands-on. We can test their VO2 max. We can sample their blood lactate and give them some real definitive numbers. But hopefully I've described a decent framework there that people can ballpark it at home.
What I understood from what you were saying there was that this sort of maximum heart rate, 65% of that, that's nice. But what we really want is the blood lactate level. From what I heard you say, this is a moving target. As we get more fit, the zone 2 number, like the heart rate, goes up because we're able to output more, put more effort out with less lactate being generated. I've never actually had like a lactate test.
Yeah.
Like if somebody wants to like be on this, how often are they testing their lactate?
Yeah. Depends on your training protocol, right? And whether you've seen some meaningful changes. So a very user-friendly way to track some changes that might be meaningful enough to retest would be the following. Set yourself up a little test you do maybe once every 3 or 4 weeks. The test would look something like this. You're going to stay at a given workload for 3 or 4 minutes, maybe as long as 5 minutes. By workload, I mean speed or grade on the treadmill. I mean watt output on your bicycle. I mean maybe a running pace around a 400-meter track. And what I'll do is send my clients a little Excel spreadsheet that says, let's try for 5 or 6 different workloads. Could be running, could be walking. Let's use a walking protocol for an exam, or running protocol. Maybe a lot of runners listening. We might start at 5.5 miles an hour or 5.0. That'd be about a 12-minute mile. And every 3 to 5 minutes, we're increasing that speed by half a mile per hour. So you're going up 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7. And if running is too fast for you, then we can do this walking with incline. Again, you can use the bicycle. Doesn't matter what tool you use, as long as we have a set increment of increasing workload. Every 3 to 5 minutes, you're going to record your heart rate. And of course, what we expect to see over time, David, if you are having meaningful improvement in your VO2 max and also in your blood lactate threshold levels, we will see lower heart rates at those workloads. Now, every month, I've seen some people improve 5 to 8 beats per minute lower. It's amazing, right? Those are the responders. Maybe over 3 or 4 months, they've dropped their heart rate at a given speed and grade by 15 or 20 beats per minute, which is amazing, right? So much more easy work to do. And obviously, their zone 2 is changing quite a bit within there. So that's one would be my trigger probably to either do another blood lactate test or another VO2 max test, is when you see significant changes in your heart rate at a given workload. I mean, another really easy way to do this would be you're out for your weekend long run or whatever, and I run 8-minute miles for my 9 or 10 mile run, or I hold 20 miles an hour on my 50-mile bike ride. Is your heart rate dramatically different at that level? Right? Understanding we all have good days and bad days, and I'm still looking for the explanation of that, right? How do we, so is everybody, I think, how do we arrive at the big event that we're training for with all the magic, right? Where we feel great and our heart rate is 10 or 15 beats lower than it usually is, and or you feel that extra bit of strength on the day of your CrossFit competition or whatever it is, right? How do the stars align where we feel that magic on that day? So, maybe a couple tests to vet that you have definitely lower heart rates at that workload, and it wasn't just a one-off fluke day that you're feeling spectacular, or it's same thing for a bad day, right? So does that give you some idea of when to test that VO2 and that blood lactate level again?
It sounds like if I feel like getting more fit, I need to test because I probably need to up my effort.
Yep,
Uh,
exactly.
Talk to me about strategies that you developed for, say, somebody who's, we'll just say over 50. Up until my mid 40s, I could just put on a pair of sneakers and go out and run 10 miles. I don't even think about it. Be like, okay, great. That would be unthinkable right now. So different time, different body. So as people are over 50, how do you work out this sort of 7 day, like if you take a week, 7 days, balancing out the sort of things that we need to hit? So you mentioned VO2 max, you mentioned zone two, you've also mentioned strength training. There's also mobility, balance. That's like a lot of stuff, Mike. Like, that's just like a job. There's also, we recover a lot slower than we used
Yep.
to, unfortunately. How do you deal with that? Like, what do you say to somebody?
Great quandary that I see every day in my clients here at Canyon Ranch and in my personal fitness journey as well. As I mentioned, being 61 years old, right? Recovering triathlete, as I like to say, right? Used to train 20 hours a week, hardcore triathlon training. And like you, I used to be able to put on the shoes, go out and run 10 miles, no problem. Just this morning, in fact, as I try to ramp my pathetic aerobic fitness level up to compete with my 13-year-old son in the turkey trot coming up on Thanksgiving Day, which is only a month away. Once a week now, I go out and run 2 miles or 3 miles, trying to say, because I say pathetic aerobic fitness because my main focus the last 7 or 8 years has been mainly CrossFit type activities, which does not feature some really long distance running or cardio. And in a general rule, most CrossFitters are not spectacular runners. So even with the vestiges of my triathlon days, I still feel like a pretty good runner when I go run at the CrossFit gym. But I know compared to real runners, I'm leaving a lot out there. So yes, how do we balance this? What do we focus on over age 50? How do we keep all these balls in the air juggling on top of, this ever decreasing capacity to recover and ever increasing, it seems to me at least, stressors in your life, right? Aging parents, kids in college, homes, home repairs, you name it, right? All the stressors we all try to balance. And I think idea number one here is let's identify what each individual needs to focus on because it's different for each of us, right? And that's why we love doing all the testing we can do here at Canyon Ranch, right? Get an assessment if you can of where you are with muscle mass, with VO2 max, with balance, with mobility, with pain, with your stresses in your body, your traumas, your anxieties, etc., and get all that on paper or in front of you and see what's the low-hanging fruit here that I can really need to address and spend most of my time addressing. Do I need to lose body fat? What are my blood lipid levels and my blood panels looking like? What's my kidney function like? What's my muscle mass like? What's my body fat like? All these kind of things need to be taken into consideration so we can develop a strategic plan, what we address first and foremost, because you're right, we only have so much time in the day, we all have only so much energy. There are tons of what I call energy vampires sucking at our lifeblood all day long, and if we don't give what matters, our true energy, it's going to fall by the wayside. I don't care who you are, if you're busy as can be during the day and you've given all your energy and now it's 6 o'clock at night, your time to exercise, and you have not taken a good job of drinking water all day or fueling your body all day, where's that energy going to come from? And if you've left it all at work, good luck motivating yourself to do some cardio or some strength training. So prioritizing yourself is really important, and your health. And that's what the beauty of an immersion experience at a place like Canyon Ranch is. And I hate to keep talking about Canyon Ranch all the time, but I just think it's such a great model for people to do that introspective look into their health and wellness, have some time away from their rat race of their life and re-strategize. What is missing? What do I need to focus on? Holy cow, I've let this really get away from me and I need to focus on this. So, body composition test, get a DEXA scan. Number one, somewhere, somehow, know how much muscle mass you have, fat-free mass, know how much visceral fat you have, and see what you need to do there. Get a VO2 max test somewhere, know your training zones. And then, ideally, could we be doing 3 or 4 days a week of something aerobic at least? 3 or 4 days a week is kind of the buy-in where we see improvement. Of those 3 or 4 days a week, for the males and the menstruating females in the audience, they might be able to do as much zone 2 as they want and as much HIIT training as they want. So maybe they split it half and half, 2 or 3 days a week of zone 2, 2 or 3 days a week of HIIT, high intensity interval training. Some interesting research by Dr. Stacy Sims, has shown that people without hormones, maybe postmenopausal women, should not do a ton of zone 2. They can do some, of course. It's not going to make them fat, but maybe a little more HIIT training, because HIIT training has been shown to clear cortisol a little more effectively after exercise than steady state zone 2. So for those clients, I might recommend maybe 0 or 1 days a week of zone 2, and the majority of the training sessions HIIT training. And starting off with 15, 20 minutes of HIIT training could be plenty. And doing it that way so you don't get overwhelmed and demotivated and stop exercising. That's the main thing. Stay consistent. When it comes to weightlifting, strength training, super duper important. I tell people it is a non-negotiable. If you want to age in a healthy way, you've got to lift weights. End of story. Full stop, period, done. You got to develop some strength regimen. And there's a lot of different ways you can do this, right? You can meet with a trainer 3 days a week if you need an appointment to get your butt in the gym. Oh, that's too much. I don't have a set schedule. What's wrong with once a week? I meet with a personal trainer once a week at the CrossFit gym because I like to work on form and technique of the Olympic weightlifting exercises and get some pointers. Average people might want to have their form or technique looked at and evaluated once a week or once a month. And what we find in people is if you're meeting with an authority figure, quote unquote, a personal trainer once a week or once a month, it tends to really increase your diligence and commitment to exercise, because you don't want to look like an idiot when you come in there. Oh, I haven't done anything since our last session. I haven't improved at all. So many people like to feel accountable to somebody, and having that once a week check-in or once a month check-in, I find really helps people with that. So can you develop a strength training regimen 3 days a week? Really important to lift 3 or 4 sets. Big volume is really shown to be important for building muscle. And repetition number can range quite a bit. No clear literature on is 8 repetitions better than 15. The ballpark range anywhere from 2 repetitions to 15 to get within 3 repetitions of failure. So we like to say, lift a heavy enough weight that gets you within 3 repetitions, with 3 repetitions in reserve, meaning you got 3 repetitions left at the end of your set before you reach failure. And then having a weightlifting program that's very flexible, David, I think is important, because a lot of people tend to be perfectionists and they say, well, I've got this 40-minute routine that does my chest, back, shoulders, legs, biceps, triceps, abs, etc. And holy cow, I've only got 10 minutes of time or energy. Therefore, I'm doing none. Terrible attitude to have, right? And because day number 1 of doing that, skipping the workout, is the beginning of you becoming a non-exerciser. So I'm big on preaching people, be an exercise participant, not an exercise perfectionist. Do something. Something's always better than nothing. Studies show 1 set close to fatigue really does a lot to preserve your muscle strength, the neuromuscular brain to muscle connection. I think the bigger part of that is you can pat yourself on the back and say, you did something today, Mike. You're still in the program and you're still an exerciser. You're still on a strength training regimen. And 2 days from now, you can pick up where you left off. Instead of, you haven't done this for a week, you better go down and wait. That's humiliating and demotivating. Stay in the ball game. Stay consistent is the best advice I can give people. Really important. So back to your question, big picture. Can we do 3 days a week or 4 of cardio? Can we do 3 or 4 days a week of strength training? Maybe a person has a busier schedule. They have shorter amounts of time more frequently. Fine. 15, 20 minutes of cardio in the morning, 15, 20 minutes of weights after that, 30 minutes, 40 minutes in the gym. Do it, often, right? And then in terms of the balance, agility, that kind of stuff, right? It's nice to pepper into your weightlifting program some plyometric exercise. And a lot of people say, I'm 50, 60 years old. My knees hurt when I jump. Well, welcome to the club. So do mine a little bit, but I do a little bit of jumping, not a lot. 3 or 4 jumps, maybe some counter movement jumps, crouching down, jumping up as high as you can, maybe jumping up on a plyometric box. We call those box jumps, stepping down, jumping up. Stepping down is easier on the knees. And again, low volume, 5, 6 of these maybe total during your whole weightlifting program. Maybe doing some skater lunges, that kind of thing. We find that this type 2 muscle fibers and your central nervous system are highly trainable. And if we don't do any of that quick burst activity stuff, holy moly, do those muscles and those neuromuscular pathways go to sleep, right? Not that they're not there, but I'm sure as you realize, if you try to go out and play a little pickup soccer with your 13-year-old or 20-year-old, it feels like your shoes are in concrete when you try to move quickly and respond to a rapid change of direction.
Mike, are there any sort of innovations, things going on out there that you see coming down the pike that excite you today?
Yeah, boy, we're constantly being bombarded by gadgets and wearables and training techniques. It's hard to keep up with it all, even as a career devotee, and that's my life, right? Is exercise physiology, exercise science, trying to stay abreast of all this technology. And I view it as my job to kind of screen this stuff, right? Read the literature, read the lay literature ideas, because people come in my office all the time and say, what's this fat burning zone? Or is this device good? Is this training program something I should follow? And it's really tough to keep on top of all this stuff. I think some of the most important wearables out there are things like the Aura Ring, the Whoop Strap, et cetera, where we're starting to get some grip on recovery. You mentioned earlier, right? As we get older, recovery is tough. And it is. And now we have some metrics like heart rate variability, sleep scores, that kind of stuff that can give us some real feedback on, are we recovering adequately? And also, what impact do things like alcohol, things like stress, things like overreaching in our training? Because if you're like me, I tend to be a little type A. If a little bit is good, more is better. And man, studies show over 55 or 60, when we go to complete failure, when we really overreach, we pay a price in recovery and injury risk and that sort of thing. And it is fun to push to failure. I like doing that. But I realize over time and looking at my scores of recovery, it's a steep price to pay, right, of recovery. So some of these wearables, I think, are really waking people up to some lifestyle changes. Are they perfect? No. Are we still learning what is the efficacy of heart rate variability and how do we interpret those numbers? Yes. But I think we all need to be dabbling in these things and getting our finger on the pulse, pun intended, of what these metrics mean and how we might change our training. One thing we're playing around with here at Canyon Ranch right now are velocity meters, right? These little devices you can put on a barbell, a dumbbell, on a limb of your body, your wrist or your ankle, and seeing how quickly do you move through space, right? And one thing that can really tell us how fatigued we're getting is how, if our barbell or dumbbell is moving slower throughout our repetition scheme, right? So that might give us some information to the right training dose when I tell you, David, do 3 sets of 10 repetitions, get within 3 repetitions of fatigue. You're like, what the heck does that mean? If you had this velocity meter that you could just Velcro onto the barbell or onto your dumbbell or on your wrist, it would tell you, hey, you're slowing down to a certain point that you should probably stop now. That's really meaningful, right? Again, we're kind of experimenting with that now, so I'm not quite sure we're ready for prime time use of everybody, but just like the space exploration program, how do we learn about these things? We got to get in there, put them on, try them out, see how they work for us. So those are a few of the things we're playing around with here. We're also really big on force plate testing. jumping, balance testing on those. A lot of people say, what am I going to learn as a 60-year-old on my jumping? Well, jumping tells us a lot about type 2 muscle fiber. How quickly can you develop power in your muscles? Power is work divided by time, right? So sure, you might be really strong, but if you move slow as an elephant, and I think elephants can move fast, so that's not really a great analogy, but you know what I mean. Slow and powerful, that's great, but that lack of speed is not going to save you from falling, right? That lack of speed is not going to improve your golf swing. That lack of speed is not going to improve your tennis or pickleball reaction time. So we do some force plate testing, counter movement jumping, etc., and give people a score on their power. And then, if appropriate, give them an intervention like, okay, as part of your weightlifting plan, I want you doing this jumping regimen. And studies have shown that really decreases fall risk, right? Because if you're out on a trail and either running or hiking and you stumble on a boulder, what's going to save you? Getting that other leg or arm out in front of you quickly. And if you never train power, good luck doing that.
Mike, I'm really looking forward to coming to Canyon Ranch. I'll be there middle of November for Longevity 8. And really, I can't say I'm looking forward to doing a VO2 max test. I've done them in the past. It's not the most fun thing in the world, but super informative. And you can test my lactate and whatever else you want to test on me. I love this kind of stuff. There's training and there's training smart. And I'm learning the older I get, emphasis on smart.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're looking forward to having you, David. It'll be great to test you out. And I always tell people on that VO2 max test, think of it this way. 80% of the time you're working, it's going to be comfortable and fine, like a warm up, getting a little harder towards the end of that 80%. The last 20%, yeah, you got about 15% moderate discomfort, and maybe the last 5%, 2 or 3 minutes, no picnic, right? If we're going to do a good test, we got to suffer a little bit at the end, but then it's over and you get to recover. So yeah, in the blood lactate test, you might feel the first 1 or 2 pinpricks in your fingers, but then the other discomfort you're feeling will far outweigh that, and you won't feel the finger pricks at all.
I'm looking forward to that, Mike. Absolutely.
We'll take good care of you. Don't worry.
All right. Very good. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, David. Great chatting.
Take care.
Mike gave us a gold mine of information. Whenever we talk about VO2 max, it's a little bit out of my wheelhouse. But what struck me was just one, how I think his definition was the first one that I was like, oh, aha, I understand VO2 max and its importance. I think he broke it down in a very easy way for anyone who's unfamiliar to understand and kind of grasp why it is so important. But what also struck me was just his definition of performance. He wasn't just talking about VO2 max's importance for athletes, but he was just emphasizing the little things and how it can help you live the life you want to live. He gave, I think, an example of just like the ability to like catch your plane if you're like running late. The endurance it takes just to do that and lift your carry-on and do all of that without having to slow down and gasp for air, I think is something we all want to do. It is really just the little things, and being able to do those with the endurance it takes without having to think too much about it or pause so briefly is something that is really powerful because it just allows us to live the way we want to live.
So many of these longevity metrics, they're very useful. VO2 max being one of the more powerful ones. It's not just about your future self, it's about your present self.
Mhm.
So, by taking care of your present self and making, whatever you can do to help that be better, you're also helping your future self.
Yeah, when it comes to heart health too, VO2 max is something that is trainable. And I know that you've had experience with that in terms of
Yeah.
doing VO2 tests and improving your VO2 max level. So it is something that you put a little bit of effort in. I know that you've talked about the test before, that it can be kind of uncomfortable.
But yeah,
No pain, no gain, right?
it's short. It's only 12 minutes, and it's only the last 2 minutes that are really unpleasant. But it's one of those things. We don't want to really get into metric mania, but this is a pretty good one. This is one where feelings really are not facts, and understanding what that number is, and then working towards improving it, because you can. It's not that hard.
Yeah, and if it's something like that that's so, I don't want to say simple, because like you're saying, it can take a little bit of effort in those 12 minutes, but just doing that to build your aerobic horsepower is worth it. I love that he described it that way too, aerobic horsepower. Like, Who wouldn't want their engine to be stronger?
That's right. Let's go faster.
Exactly. All right, so let's get into these stories. The first one around melatonin. Similar to what we've talked about when we've looked at other studies in terms of how they're being conducted. I'm sure you'll have a lot to say about this one. But there are new safety signals around long-term melatonin usage. It was a large observational data set over 130,000 adults with chronic insomnia, and it flagged that long-term nightly melatonin users, and long-term meaning 12 months or at least 12 months, they had a 90% higher chance of being diagnosed with heart failure and were up to 3.5 times more likely to be hospitalized for heart failure. But now here's the kicker. They found association, not necessarily causation. So then it brings into question, is it just lifestyle habits overall around sleep? Is it other sleep metrics that are causing that? And it just happens to be that these are also melatonin users because they already suffer from insomnia. So, like, getting at the root cause of why they're having insomnia. But it was interesting to me that this is still being presented at the American Heart Association, one of the conferences this past week, and that some people might just gloss over that it was an association and not causation.
Yeah, I think what we know is that if you're not sleeping well, you're prone to all kinds of diseases, cardiovascular disease being one of the main ones. I mean, I like that people do these studies. There, as you said, it's complicated. What else are these people doing? It's 130,000 people. What are you tracking them daily? All of them? Then no, you're not. And when they say melatonin use, I mean, what we talking 300 micrograms, or are we talking like 20 grams? What's the dosage we're talking about here? And then what's the control on that? That I've read numerous studies that, you go into the drugstore and you buy a melatonin supplement and you're not really sure. It says 1 and maybe it's 10 or maybe it's 0.1. You just like, there's not a lot of control on this stuff. So I think it's good that these studies are being done. I wish there was more control and a little deeper understanding on these things. But, unless you're going to take a bunch of people and you like lock them in a room for a year and see if they have cardiovascular disease, it's a little difficult.
Yeah, I feel like, again, just looking at studies like these is always important, not necessarily for maybe what the study is showing, but the questions it forces us to ask about how the study was conducted. And when we look at something like if you're having trouble sleeping, right, we already know that's such an important pillar of health. And most people would rather take a simple supplement like melatonin or another sleep aid to help them fall asleep rather than maybe moving their bedtime up earlier or getting better into a better circadian rhythm or changing around maybe their bedroom environment first, which those things might be more helpful initially because it can more likely address maybe the chronic problem of why they're not sleeping so well. But in a similar vein, let's talk about bedroom lighting. Because there was also a study that was reported on Science Daily that researchers in Boston found that exposure to light, now specifically artificial light at night, correlates with heightened stress-related brain activity and inflamed arteries, which are both markers linked to cardiovascular disease and accelerated aging. The study had a little bit more basis. It wasn't as kind of loosey-goosey as the first one we looked at, but we kind of know light's importance in circadian rhythm. And simply like exposing yourself to blue light, looking at your phone, watching TV right before bed. These are all things that, although we may think that they're helping us wind down, are really like having an effect on our physiological health.
I replaced all the light bulbs in this apartment with 2800K very warm light bulbs because there's no reason to have a blue light bulb unless you're in a place that doesn't have a window. The window works really well. I mean, I sort of get it. Like if you're in, an office and you want like that blue light, that, 5,000, 6,000 K light, it is easier to read text and things like that. At home, no. I mean, I just no reason for having that color light.
Particularly even if it's just in your bedroom environment, right? Like,
Yeah, just replace light bulbs. Really easy.
so last up here, another study that was reported on Science Daily, this idea of boosting the feeling of having control to reduce daily stress burden. A lot of us maybe think of like micromanaging and control as being a negative thing, but this study was looking at that researchers at Pennsylvania State University found that on days when people felt more in control of their daily hassles, they were 62% more likely to actively resolve them. And interestingly, that effect strengthened with age.
Mhm.
So it's not just how many stressors we face, it's how we feel about managing them.
Mhm.
And just that mindset shift can do wonders in terms of how we're actually able to actively resolve them.
That's right. So the sense of autonomy, the sense of, I mean, they use the word control. I think I like the word autonomy a little better. There's a lot of research out there that, like, if you think random odd things are going to be happening to you during the day, so that's a lack of autonomy. That's much more stressful than having some sense of, okay, like these things happen during the day, but I know they're going to happen. And so I can plan for them. I think it's one of the things that people rate highest in their job satisfaction is how much autonomy do they have versus having someone else have control over a lot of your life. That's really stressful.
Is there anything you do every day to create a sense of autonomy or any practices that you've put in place to boost that feeling?
That is a very good question. What I try and do is really have full control of my time before 10 in the morning. So maybe I'll go out by the river and have a walk. Maybe I'll go to the gym. Maybe I'll do some writing. But I want to have like that time from like 7 till 10 is where I feel I can really focus before Slack starts going off and email and text and all that other stuff, which very much erodes my sense of autonomy.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people can relate to that no matter what sector of work they're in, or it's a feeling that can make you feel like you're spiraling very quickly.
That's right. Yeah, just make some me time, whether it's like 5 minutes or, for me, it's like 3 hours in the morning. And then that's yours. You can
Yeah.
do with it what you wish.
Well, as always, we love to shout out all of those It's Not Too Late stories that we've been receiving in. And this week we are shouting out Bernice, who studied with Dr. Bredesen and Apollo Health at age 59, and Carrie, who earned their master's degree at 50. So if you have an accomplishment you're proud of or a story that embodies the ethos that it's not too late, please send them our way. Share them with us by going to aegis.com/story.
That's a wrap for this week's episode. Be sure to check out more stories and share your own. Again, go to aegis.com/story. We're always looking for fresh voices to feature here on the podcast and across the Aegis platform.
Thanks so much for listening. Stay strong, stay vibrant, and we'll see you next week.